This is rental car number 135, and today I'm driving the 2020 Toyota Corolla LE. This is my first ever 2020 vehicle, so I'm a little excited to share it with you today. LE is the trim level on this one. There's actually 7 trim levels on the Corolla this year. The LE is the second to lowest, but don't worry, there's still plenty of good stuff to talk about. A couple other quick details. This is in black, but Toyota calls it black sand pearl, so that's the exterior color. On the inside, we have all black fabric interior. Now, the Corolla is a compact car. This one retails for about $20,000, and the Corolla itself has been around since 1966. This is actually the 12th generation of the Corolla, so it's pretty reliable, which is one of my top selling points for this vehicle. And I actually like this one quite a bit. You should know before we go any further that I am a big fan of smaller, reliable, cheaper vehicles, and this one hits all 3 of those categories. Now, under the hood, we have a 1.8-liter 4-cylinder engine. You also get a continuously variable transmission, CVT for short. For those that don't know, that just means that you're going to shift through the gears really smoothly from start to finish. You're not going to get any of that jerkiness you typically feel with a transmission. Now, not a whole lot of power on this vehicle. You only get 139 RPMs, 139 horsepower, I should say, at 6,100 RPMs. But because of that lack of power, you get some pretty good gas mileage. 30 miles per gallon in the city, 38 on the highway with a combined rating of 34. You also get yourself a 13.2 gallon fuel tank. Now, I live in the Chicago suburbs, and right now you can fill up for about $2.95 a gallon. It's fall of 2019 right now. That's not too bad. So if you're filling up by me, that means that it's going to cost you probably around $39. And one quick thing while we got the hood open, I just love it when you open up the hood on a new vehicle. This just looks so clean and gorgeous. I kind of stared at it for a while I was filming, but let's move on. So here's the key fob. You got Toyota's logo on the back, a couple of buttons on the front. Silver button pops out the key. You also have lock and unlock buttons, a hatch release, trunk release, and then a panic button right here. It's got a nice weight to it. This is some pretty solid plastic, doesn't feel too cheap, so I like this key all in all. And let me switch hands so we can start up the vehicle. So here's the steering wheel setup. 2 stalks with your standard controls on it. A couple of buttons to review. This directional keypad will adjust the settings up here in the gauge cluster. I'll show you that in a second, along with a back button. You also have a button to answer and hang up phone calls. Volume buttons right here, and you can access the virtual assistant technology right here. You also have cruise controls with adaptive cruise control. That means you can use this setting right here to have the car automatically match the speed of the car in front of you. Lane departure assistance, so this will keep you in the center of the lane and even steer the car through some gentle curves. It's actually pretty fun to play around with. A mode button to switch the entertainment features in the center console, and then track buttons to jump through the tracks. Gauge cluster is pretty compact. It's not that large, but it has all the important information. So you got your RPMs here on the left-hand side, temperature down here, speedometer, and your fuel gauge right here, and then a screen right here with a bunch of useful information on it. Up top, right up here, we can see if the cruise control is activated and if the lane departure assistant technology is activated. That's that little icon right here with the car that's veering out of the lane. We have outside temperature and a clock, and then down here we have some adjustable settings. So right now it's at the miles per gallon setting. I've been doing some highway driving for about the last 2 hours, and I'm getting a pretty decent 34 miles per gallon. And then we have miles until empty, so I can drive this car another 215 miles before I run out of fuel. Let me shift through some of the screens and just show you. And I'm just going to press this directional keypad right here to cycle through it. So you can have a bigger screen showing you the lane departure assistant technology. You can show us a trip counter. Notice I have the car on for 8 minutes so far while I film this. Some additional screens to show you all the driver assistant technology. Messages if you want to connect your cell phone, and then we're back to my favorite screen, which shows you miles per gallon. Down below we show that we're in the park,
and that our odometer, this thing already has 9,000 miles on it, which I think is pretty impressive since this is a brand new vehicle. But all in all, I think it's a nice gauge cluster. It's been really easy to quickly glance down and see the information that I need really quickly. Over on the left-hand side, we have standard controls for the windows, the door locks, and to adjust the side view mirrors. You also have a silver door latch and a lock up here. Over on the dash, we have controls to adjust the brightness of the display up in the gauge cluster, along with the control to turn on and off the auto high beam feature. So that means when you're driving at night, you can activate this control and the car will automatically turn on the high beams when they're needed, and when it senses a car way up ahead, it'll automatically stop the high beams, go to normal headlights until that car passes, and then the high beams will be turned back on. It's actually pretty nice. Side view mirrors do not have blindside detection in this vehicle, but it's a good size and I haven't had any problems. Up top we have pretty simple controls, just buttons to turn on the lights, and then simple controls to adjust whether or not the lights are going to turn on automatically when you open a door, and then an SOS button right here tucked behind a plastic shield. Rear view mirror, pretty standard, no buttons on it of any kind. Down below is where things start to get a little bit more interesting. Let me turn down the fan in case it's blowing on you. Pretty nice display. It pops out of the dash. Let me show you from the side. It almost looks as though they've glued a touchscreen just to the car itself. I kind of like this. It looks pretty interesting, and this is kind of the design that most auto manufacturers are going with right now. Gives them a chance to give you a bigger display and not have to worry about the slope of the dash. Pretty nice setup. You have some dedicated physical buttons on the right and left to jump to all the important features. It is a touch screen, so you can also use the screen itself to jump to all the different settings. Let me go back to that for a second. KK iPod Touch. Nice. Anyway, clock shows you how well your phone is connected to the cellular network, the battery life on your phone, and that your phone is connected via Bluetooth. This has all worked great. This is the audio screen, so you're seeing what podcast I'm listening to, but you can go to the home button and kind of get an overall sense of what's going on with the vehicle. And you can see right here, you can actually see real-time information on your miles per gallon. That's always fun to play around with, and a range indicator right here. Right now I can drive another 215 miles before the tank goes empty. Below there we have 2 vents, and then your climate controls. These work pretty well. I like Toyota's setup. You get a digital display right here to tell you what temperature the car is at. Nice knobs right here to adjust both the fan and how hot or cold the temperature is set. And these click really nicely, which I always like. And they don't have rubber on top, but they do have a plastic that kind of has a sticky kind of feel to it, so it makes it easy to grip. And then you have physical buttons down below to adjust things like the defroster settings, whether the vents are open to the outside, and where the vents are going to blow. So all in all, this has worked great. Ooh, getting a text message, which brings me down here. You have a small storage cutout. This is where I've been keeping my cell phone. Works pretty well. Here's what it looks like without the cell in there. You also have a traction control button right here. You can turn it on or off with a simple push. And then you have your gear shift. Let me push down the brake. Shifts through pretty easily, and I like that the LEDs right here, you see it's blue in park, kind of an orangish color for reverse, green for neutral, and blue for drive, and blue for B. So pretty easy. And when you do shift it into reverse, you do get a rear view camera that pops up. It's got a nice wide display, so you can see all over behind you. And then you get some indicators right here, some guides to show you where you're moving the vehicle. That's always useful. Not the best resolution I've ever seen. If you notice, the cars in the back are a little bit grainy, but whatever. I mean, it works. You can see behind you, which is the point of a rear view camera, at least in my opinion. So let's put this back in park. Behind there we have the electronic parking brake. You'll notice it automatically engaged when I shift it into park, and that's a setting you can turn on and off. And this is the auto brake hold feature. So if you push this, which I'm going to do right now, you'll see an indicator come up in the gauge cluster. And this means that if I were to put the car, not if, let me do it for you. When I put the car into drive and I lift my foot off the brake pedal, the car is going to hold itself steady, so it's not going to pull forward until I push on the gas pedal. And that's actually really nice to have, especially when you're in stop and go traffic, because you don't have to constantly be pushing down the brake pedal to keep the car stopped. It's something I really, really like, and I have kept engaged the entire time that I've been driving the vehicle. So you see, still in drive, and if you look outside, we are not moving right now. Let me put the car back in park just to be extra safe. Behind there we have 2 cup holders, drinking some water right now, and then also a center armrest. Has a synthetic type material on top, kind of small. If you notice, I can grip the whole thing with my hand, but it's got a nice storage area down in here with a felt lining on the bottom, and you get a USB port and then a power port right here. And then last thing I want to point out is the glove box. Let's open it up. I have a nice space, no shelf or anything, but it's a decent size, and we have our owner's manual, our registration, and then some quick reference guides right here. So all in all, good size, but nothing special on this one. I almost forgot, let's test out the horn. So last thing I want to talk about is visibility. Obviously no issues out the front, but out the back, you do have a little bit of limited visibility because those headrests in the back are taking up quite a bit of room. I've noticed this on Toyotas I've owned in the past. Usually what I end up doing is removing those headrests, but if you look, they're actually attached, so there's no way to remove them. So I don't know, just something you might want to keep in mind if you're thinking about renting or owning this vehicle. Alright, so I jumped in the back seat. This driver's seat is pushed back all the way, so the maximum distance, and I still have about 4 inches of legroom between my knees and the back of that seat. I'm about 6 feet tall. I got pretty long legs, pretty much all legs, and despite that, I still fit back here pretty comfortably. Not a whole lot of amenities back here. You'll notice there are no pockets on the back of the seats. Well, I take that back. There is a pocket on the back of the passenger seat. Looks like someone left us something. What's in here? I love the goodies I get in my rental cars. Okay, so tailor and design. Looks like a price listing. Not too exciting. I'm gonna keep that in there for the next renter. So, decent pocket. It's made out of kind of a fabric-like material. Has a little bit of give to it, but not enough where you get anything really large in here. No ports or anything on the back of the center armrest for the front seat passengers. Just a kind of a cutout right here. Not sure what you could store there, but it is available. Window controls, door latch and lock. Up top we have the standard handle with a small hook right here to help you hang a jacket. That's pretty nice. And you get the same setup on the other door as well. There's a center armrest. I already have it down. It's got 2 cup holders. Again, synthetic material right here that feels pretty nice. Let me put it back up. And then we have our car seat anchors. Have this little plastic covering right here. You can just pull it out pretty easily. It's totally removed. And then the car seat anchor is completely exposed. If you don't have kids, you don't really appreciate how nice this is. Usually, the car seat anchors are tucked into the crease of the seat, and you gotta reach back in there and kind of feel around for it, and then figure out a way to stick the car seat hook in there to get access to the car seat anchor. Because this is totally exposed, it makes installing a car seat super simple. So I love this. It makes it a lot easier, and pretty easy to put the cover back on too. So you have one here, another one here, and then 2 on the other seat as well.
Alright, so let's move on and talk about the trunk space. Before we do that, I just want to point out that there is no exterior button for the trunk release. Typically it's tucked underneath right by the license plate light, but not on this vehicle. There's nothing there. So you're either going to have to go inside the vehicle to the driver's side and use the release that's located right there on the floor, or you can use the key fob itself to pop open the trunk. Once you get it open, you'll see that it's a pretty decent size. The wheel wells do infringe on the space just a little bit, but it's enough space back here to get suitcases, groceries, and stuff like that. Underneath the carpet of this area, there is a section made out of styrofoam that holds all the tools that you'll need to change a spare, and then underneath that area is the spare tire. Not a full-size spare, but it is there, and that's a good thing because manufacturers like Kia have begun removing the spares from their vehicle. If you do need more space, if the trunk's not enough, you can fold down those rear seats. You just have to reach inside the vehicle all the way around the headrests and press these buttons right here. It's a little bit difficult to do, but once you get your hands on those buttons, the seats fold down pretty effortlessly. And then you reveal all the storage space on this vehicle. It's quite a bit, and thankfully the cutout between the trunk and the cabin of the vehicle is pretty large. So if you have larger items, it should be pretty easy to get them through the car. Alright, so now that we've looked at the inside of the vehicle, let's move on by talking about acceleration, handling, and cabin noise. Acceleration is, well, it's not great. From a stop, it takes the Corolla quite a bit of time to build up speed, and you never really get that sensation of the car pulling you forward, when you have a lot of power. It's just not like that with the Corolla. It's kind of a slow and steady increase in speed. But with that being said, I still didn't have any issues with this car. I could get onto the highway with no problems, and I could pass vehicles on the highway if I needed to. So it works fine. I just wouldn't say acceleration is fun on this vehicle. Handling is another matter. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, I actually drive a Toyota as my daily driver, so this felt pretty familiar to me, but still, it is solid around the corners at high speeds, and it is super responsive at low speeds. So parking this thing is absolutely a pleasure, especially compared to some of the larger SUVs I've been driving lately. Cabin noise is also pretty decent, even at high speeds. So I drove this thing a long way. We had a 4-hour trip one way that I did with this thing, and I was going mostly about 70-75 miles an hour, and I didn't ever need to bump up the volume to listen to my podcasts and my audiobooks. The cabin noise is pretty solid, which is great for a vehicle at this price point. Alright, so that's pretty much everything end to end on the 2020 Toyota Corolla LE. I drove this thing, as I said, for a long time. I had it for 3 days. I was probably behind the wheel for 10 to 15 hours of that time. So I got a lot of time driving this vehicle. So with that being said, I'm going to give this one 4 stars. Look, this is a great car at a great price. It's super reliable. It has decent technology, great handling, but the acceleration is pretty bad. So I just can't give it 5 stars because it doesn't have that fun factor that I typically like in my vehicles. Anyway, that's me. If you think differently, please leave me a comment below. I'd love to chat with you about this one. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time when I rent my 136th rental car. I'll see you then.